Janet, I didn't know I was on. I didn't know how to work this. I have some a beauty bush and some other stuff, which I should cut some more branches out. This spring I did it. I cut some out, and now I'm wondering, does this have to be done in the spring? Then the plant would have more energy to produce new one, or can it be done now also?
You can definitely cut that now. This is Beauty Bush, the one that gets the pink flowers in it after the crab apples.
Yes.
Yeah. Whatever you cut out now will not be there to bloom, but that won't affect the other branches. Everything you leave will bloom. Energy wise, it's going to have pretty much the same amount of energy unless you cut it back really hard, because every branch is fueled by the leaves on that branch primarily. So as long as the leaf buds all stay there and they all grow next year, it will have as much energy either way. See,
well, I was going to cut it at the soil line.
Oh, well, if you want to do that, you'll lose all of next year's bloom. If it's Beauty Berry, the one that has a light pink bloom, the flowers are in clusters, but they have an open mouth, almost like a tiny snapdragon. Beauty Berry, I cut all the way down because it blooms on new wood.
No, it's not Beauty Berry. It's Beauty Bush or something.
Yeah. There's sweet shrub.
Okay.
Yeah,
so then I should wait until the spring to cut it.
Right, and let it bloom. If it blooms if it's a spring bloomer, let it
bloom.
It's
a spring bloomer. Yes.
Yeah, let it bloom, and then you can cut it all the way down.
Yeah. Okay, and then I also have a dogwood, but that dogwood doesn't have any flowers on it. So far, it never flowered. It just has wet sticks, and I forgot to cut some sticks out. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll just cut them out now.
Sure, you can cut them out now, because what the older wood that starts turning brown and then gray, the older wood is what can give you the flowers. And most people don't see the flowers because they're always cutting to have the maximum amount of brand new sticks that are red. So if you take something out now and you take out all of the older wood, you're taking out all of the plant's chance to bloom. So, and it's not, the bloom on red twig dogwoods and yellow twig dogwoods isn't all that overwhelming. The pollinators like it, and they do produce berries that can have some color on the plant, but most people are growing it because they want the red branches in the wintertime.
Yeah, I have never seen any flowers on there, and that thing must be in there for 20 years.
But if you've been cutting it regularly to keep it nice and red, then
I've been cutting it.
Yeah, then you've been cutting out the wood before it got old enough to bloom, because it's the second.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, second year. Yeah. Okay. I see who had a really one that was really blooming nicely. Was that yours? Margie's not here yet. So I was at somebody's house this year, and I said, "Wow, what a great bloom on that!" And I mean, they're just white lace cap flowers, about bigger than a quarter, maybe a $50 size, but it really looked good. But you have to have brown and gray wood before you have flowers. Okay.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you again for opening your garden. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, I'm glad you came. I'm glad you did. We'll have to do it again. We did make a video, Steve and I, in case somebody came while we were occupied doing something else. And we're thinking about putting it up on YouTube, because there were people who couldn't come because the timing was wrong, or because they were recovering from knee surgery and those kinds of things. So we think we'll put it up on YouTube and look at it from there. Julie, Bernice, Lori, great. Glad you're here. We'll start officially at 7, but I'm sitting here at my desk right now trying to figure out how to get my mouse to work, because I thought there was something sticky on the desk every time I went to run my arm by with the mouse. I was sticking. Then I realized, oh, you've been outside and you probably got sap on your arm. It's my arm that's sticky. It's not. I was trying to rescue the weeping white pine, which I shouldn't be doing, but I thought, I'm going to take those couple of columbines off of that leading branch and make the branch stand up higher, And I did not accomplish it. It's just too much of a tangle. I said, but you're going to have to just exert your own influence here, Mr. Evergreen Woody Plant, and beat up these columbines that think that they can push you around. Okay, so I think I have everything set up. Recording is recording. Yeah, Steve is busy corralling the 4 dogs. We have our daughter Sonia's 2 labs with us for a couple of weeks. They are off in Germany and Austria. They're making up for lost time from COVID, taking vacations every place that they were going to go to and didn't go to before. She sent us pictures today of they were having lunch at a cafe on a rooftop patio. And on the rooftop patio, 3 stories up, there's a tree. And this tree, I think the trunk was bigger around than me and my chair. It's an enormous tree, and it's growing in a planting area on the roof. Can you grow things on? Can you grow plants, trees in containers? Yes. Where are the roots? They probably don't even really know where they all went to. Hey Rita, how are you? So I did have. I just love sunflower season. It can get tired of yellow this time of year because there's so many sunflowers, but I understand that the Europeans went completely berserk for all the sunflowers that we have that are all, because that whole Helianthus, the sunflower family, centers in North America. There's a couple sunflowers that are elsewhere, but we're the ones that are there. So if you grow the mammoth Russian sunflowers, the ones that get to be 8 feet tall with the great big heads on them, they were hybridized in Russia, but they're ours, all ours. John wants to know why. He said it's the same tomato from the same cell pack in the same new pot, in the same new planting soil, on the same deck, done at the same day. He said, why is one, and right now this picture he says is from a while ago. He says right now he's loaded with tomatoes on the one on the left and not the one on the right. And all I can figure is that something got damaged in the roots or at the base of the stem on the other one. Has anyone ever had this happen and figured out what was going on? Silence. Hi, Priscilla. Diane, let's see. Yes, you still show as Diane in Waterville, Diane. And yeah, there are a couple of other Dianes that do show up. Got an email from a Suzanne. And I was thinking about Suzanne. Maybe someone whose name is Suzanne would know. Why do they call it a lazy Susan? That thing that goes around in the middle of a table or whatever to distribute things. Suzanne sent this picture. She said it's her son's Japanese maple, and the leaves are all curling up, and what's going wrong? Do you want to guess what Steve and I guessed before I tell you what we guessed? Hey Bruce, hi Barb, Carol, Martha, hello Martha. No guesses? I'm looking in chat. I'm looking for somebody to raise their hand. Oh, Steve just came and closed my door with what do you call that? What was it in Bull Durham? With authority. Close my door with authority. At any rate, generally when you get to high summer and a Japanese maple, or there are some other trees that have very thin bark, if they look like this, what's happened is when it got to high summer and the water needs of the plant were the greatest, the roots were able to get some water to the leaves, but the leaves weren't able to repay the roots for all that work because the starch couldn't get through the cambium because it's been being damaged. So I asked Suzanne to give me a picture of the trunk. What we want to see is under there, what's bare in the wintertime, when the sun hits it and it heats up, as it started photosynthesizing when it warms up. And then when the sun goes down, it has no chance to readjust its moisture content, and the cells break and explode. So you end up with the damage on the trunk. While I was looking these things up to send to Suzanne, she sent back to me this picture of the trunk. She said, no, it looks like it's okay. And I said, no, this is why we want high resolution pictures. So here, looking closer, do you see the cracks in the bark? This is not what Japanese maple bark is supposed to look like. It should be smooth and gray and entire. It'll have ridges on it, like you might see up here. but it shouldn't be cracking. There's damage to the cambium here. And since the cambium gets damaged by the heating up and freezing in the wintertime, then the cambium is not alive anymore right there to make new bark on the outside and new wood on the inside. So the bark gets old, and after 3 or 4 years, it begins to crack and lift off, and then you get when it's been going for a while, you get the worst damage like this, or the more noticeable damage. So Suzanne, if you're there, I didn't see Suzanne come in, but if she doesn't come in, she'll see this on the recording, or we'll send her an email. But that tree needs to be protected in the wintertime. This one's not too terrible yet. It's probably still salvageable, but every year that needs to be shaded so that the sun does not reach it. And sometimes it looks to me like the side that's got the problem is the side that's facing, let's see, there's the bend in the trunk. It's the side that's facing out here. And so there's light reflecting off of the driveway perhaps and onto it. I've seen it be the damage be produced on the inside, the house side, because the light is bouncing off of a window and heating that side up. So if you got somebody with a Japanese maple and it's doing this, then take a good look at the trunk. Any questions among all these people who are here? We have to keep track of time here. We're okay. We got 4 minutes. A light yellow catter that looked like a woolly bear, but solid color. Oh, what are those light yellow ones? Yeah, we've seen those. It's a moth, and I can't. I should run out and grab the moth and butterfly caterpillar book, but it is a moth. It's not a particularly well, most moths are not. They fly by night, so they're not real showy, most of them. And this one is mostly brown and gray, but I can't remember what its name is. There are a lot of woolly caterpillars. Most of the ones that have fuzz or wool on them, it's a good idea not to hold them in your hand, or at least not on your more sensitive skin. Maybe your fingers won't feel it, but those hairs, which are not really hairs, they can be irritating. Go ahead, Bruce. Oh, it's not Bruce, it's Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle. Sorry about that.
Okay, I thought he was further down the list that I couldn't see.
He is. It was just his name was nearest to the hand, and I forgot how to read the list.
Okay, I didn't take a picture, but the leaves of my variegated Solomon seal are shredded parallel with the leaf edge, like totally. And I was wondering, and there's a lot of them like that. I didn't know if that was my infinite amount of slug damage or rain.
Slugs don't eat the veins; they eat between the veins, and their damage on Solomon seal, all the Solomon seal and the lily family is going to be linear like that, parallel with the edge. They don't generally eat the edge; they eat between the veins within and they shred it. It becomes a
that
vertical Venetian blind.
Yeah, that describes what I'm seeing. Those darn slugs this year. Whoa.
Yeah, I had a man tell me this year. He says, "I've never seen a slug." I said, "Then you need to go out in the morning and look for the slug trails, because our slugs here, there are slugs everywhere, really. But the slime trails in the morning are the dead giveaway. You might not think you have slugs, but they are there. And they serve a purpose. I mean, if we didn't have slugs and other things decomposing the stuff that falls, or eating in the late fall and winter when the slugs are still active, the plants aren't growing anymore, they're eating fungal spores off of plants. So they're up and down stems scraping fungus off. So they are all serving their purposes.
They give toads food.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any questions? We're just about
none in chat.
Okay. Hey, Steve, smile. Oh, but you got to talk.
You have a picture of me later.
Oh, you put a picture.
No, you did.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yes, from last night.
Okay, all right. We'll officially get started. Okay, we'll officially get started. Take it away, Steve.
Good evening and welcome to Free for All Friday. This is our 17th version. Thank you all for coming. We're coming to you from gardenaz.org. I'm Stephen Nicola.
I'm Janet McConovich, and we welcome everybody. Tell your friends. We're celebrating growing and we're cultivating problem solving, and there's a lot of that going on this week. I think I did not see any new people. Brenda, you came to just talk with us. Great. I didn't see anybody new, so I think you all know that we keep your microphone muted and your camera off, and you can chat your questions into chat, or when we're on a questions screen, then raise your hand. There's a raise your hand control someplace on that screen. There's where your microphone and your camera should be slashed, in which case we're not seeing you. And in participants, there's either a raise your hand if you open participants, or it might be in reactions, it might be in other, but someplace there's a raise your hand. And if you click on that, you'll pop to the top of the list. Steve will see you. He's moderating the chat. And when it's a questions time, he'll say, okay, go ahead, open up your microphone. When you chat, make sure that you type in your whole question before you press return. Those of us who learn to type on typewriters keep wanting to hit that return at the end of a line. And when you do that, it breaks up your question into other pieces. And if there's a lot going on in chat, there might be 3 or 4 people whose chat comes in between your 2 parts. So that is where we're going. And that's us. We were at the Association of Professional Gardeners celebrated their 25th anniversary as a group this week. And that's Carol Corbin and her daughter, Beth Winters. Carol's been on the Troy Garden Club walk a number of times and helps people out in their gardens. And Beth is beginning to coach people in their gardens too. And we took a picture. And yes, Stephen, there is a picture with his, look, he's got his mouth open and he's got his smile back. Stephen has finished the repairs from the 14-month ago nosedive off of the grandson's electric scooter. So we're celebrating growing and we're celebrating replacing teeth too. You know about the website. We'll refer you, well, we referred Suzanne there for the Japanese maple question. And we try to put the answers there where you can find them, because we can find them there. And we go back to quite often and refer to what we've done before as we're building new things. Because it's fun to write, it's fun to research. For us, it's fun to research. Some people don't think it's fun, but we love doing it. And we don't want to research the same things twice. So all of the things we've written, we keep trying to put up there. And we're doing the Free-for-All Fridays because it seemed it just seemed like a good way to continue the community talking to each other. The Association of Professional Gardeners has grown, and its individual members have grown because they share very openly. They share information about what pests they're seeing, about what they're doing, even about the ways that they're doing their billing or keeping track of their materials costs. They're being open with each other, and gardeners are open with each other. We have a real good example this week of how much benefit there is from people saying to each other things that happened in the garden or that they saw in the garden, and having a place where those can come together. So we start off with your questions because you're important. Carol and Beth are important, and they are as much a host here. You're as much a host as not. Brenda Sattler is here, and I know Brenda, well, I think Brenda, you were out at Wild Type Nursery today. Brenda is writes as Brenda Zedick, and she wrote the book on raising butterflies. I always get the title wrong. It used to be Butterflies in Your Garden. Anyway, 2 books so far on butterflies in your garden, and she started the Southeast Michigan Butterfly Association. And she is a wonder. I don't know how she does what she does, but we talked this week, and since I know she's here, I think we should talk about this.
Yeah, she said she was there today.
Yeah.
In chat.
So we're going to take advantage of that fact that Brenda is here. Monarch butterflies are having a problem, beset by, okay, we call it OE, right, Brenda? Because nobody can say this word out loud. We'll turn Brenda's microphone on, ask her to unmute. Just click your microphone off and you can talk about it, Brenda.
It keeps going on and off. Oh, there it goes.
I'm sorry. Yeah. OE is Ophiocystis electroschira. It's a parasite that either shortens their life, deforms them, or they can't even come out of their chrysalis. And so it's fine for people to raise some monarchs, but you need to do it responsibly. only raise a couple in a container that would be collapsible, like the one in the picture there, that collapsed, because before you raise even more caterpillars in there of monarchs or any type, you need to soak that in a 10% bleach solution for a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes, and that will kill the OE parasite. Plus, if some of those caterpillars have a bacterial infection, it will kill them. So you're not introducing that to more and more that you're putting in there. So it's very important to have a container that you can soak. So a collapsible one would be best, and to clean it after each life cycle of what you're raising before you put other ones in there.
And to drop back to why this is coming up and why I'm glad Brenda's here to tell you about it, is that I talked to Brenda this week about another problem that we'll get to shortly. And I mentioned that I had been talking to a friend who says that her friend has raised 400 monarchs this year, which is wonderful in one respect, but also, wow, there is one monarch caterpillar in this one. This is the one that I might have told you about last week, that he wouldn't eat the swamp milkweed, he wouldn't eat the orange milkweed, he wouldn't eat the first milkweed, that field milkweed I brought him. That's one, I'm taking care of one caterpillar, and it's all I can do to get the right things for him to eat. And to do 400 means either a lot of containers, or, as Brenda was saying, they'd have to have a really big area that they're doing. And how would they sterilize that between, because you don't want to cause a pandemic. Would it be a pandemic? I guess so. If it's the only population of monarchs in the world, it'd be a pandemic. And if you put in to a Google search monarch butterfly disease or monarch butterfly OE, you'll find that there's quite a bit written about it. Emory University says that this is a significant change. Looking at 50 years of data, the infection rate is now, that used to be 1%, like 1 out of 100, but monarchs found would have been infected with this. Now it's up to 10%, and they've got enough trouble with habitat destruction and loss of nectaring plants and host plants. So as their biologist says, it's a signal that something's not right in the environment and we need to pay attention. So if you're raising monarchs, learn something about OE and try to keep things really clean. So
Miller was asking, what do they look like when they have OE? Do we know what they look like when they?
well, I know that. Go ahead,
I'm
Brenda.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Brenda.
Okay, the chrysalis, you can tell it will be darker, and they do darken before they come out, but you see their wing pads and everything. They can be darker. The butterfly can come out and its wing can be crumped up. It may have a hard time coming out, but in some cases, you may not see anything different in the butterfly. The way that I test them for this butterfly house, that I get the chrysalises from Monarch Watch, because I'm one of the Monarch Watch conservation specialists, but I test them, even though I get them from the university, from Monarch Watch, and I take a piece of, you have to excuse me because I'm tired, it's almost bedtime, but you take a piece of clear Scotch tape and you put it on their abdomen, and then you take it off and you put it on a slide. And then I look under 400 magnification to see the OE spores, to see if they're there, and they're a reddish football shape that will be on there. That's if a butterfly looks perfectly well, that's the only way you know for sure if it's OE free.
And I understand that they can be a carrier, that genetically some of them may not be as much affected as others, but then they're carriers for other monarchs.
Yes, actually it'd be to the newly hatched caterpillar. Like if a monarch has OE spores on its abdomen, and it flies over a milkweed. It's like glitter, and the spores fall off and they're on the leaf, or if it stops there to nectar on the flowers, the spores get on the leaf. Another clean monarch comes and lays an egg. The egg hatches and it starts eating that egg, and at that time it eats that spore, and now that caterpillar is infected.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to be helpful, and you have to be so informed to be totally helpful. But while you were at Wild Type Nursery, Brenda, before you go, because I know that you are tired, she's been talking all day long.
Well, Bill Schneider, he's the owner of Wild Type Native Plant Nursery in Mason. I go there all the time, and when I see different species on plants, I get excited.
She's talking about when she sees different species of butterfly eggs or
Or
caterpillars.
caterpillars or moths, yeah. And so a few years ago I was there, and I'm like, oh, there's a snowberry clearwing caterpillar on the native honeysuckle. I've got to buy that plant. And so all these people are going, oh, we got to buy that. And then I went to this other plant and I said, oh, there's a unicorn caterpillar. Oh, I got to buy that plant. And people are going, we got to buy that plant. And I kept going around and finding things. I wasn't intending on buying these plants, but when the caterpillars were there, I had to. And the guests were doing that too. So Bill got a hold of me and wanted to know if I do a walk around with guests today and just point out different things to them. And I did find a couple species. I found again the milkweed tussock moth. I found the okay, senior moment. Okay, it's a tussock moth. It'll come to me in a minute. And I did find another unicorn. But I talk about the different plants and what species use them, if they're important, nectar plants, and how we need them right now because our monarchs are going to be going to Mexico and they need to gain weight on the way down there because they live off the fat reserve. So I just took his guest with a walk around the whole nursery and just pointed things out to them and just explained the different plants to them. So that's what Bill wanted me to come and do that today. So I did.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that you went, and I'm glad that
Yep.
there's a place like Wild Types Nursery where caterpillars can actually exist on plants. I believe, Stephen, if
Our
you-
son is
I think our
blowing
son
out the
is-
gutters.
Yes. Well, if you hear a noise, I don't know that you can hear it. Stephen and I can certainly hear it. There is a loud noise, and by the time we get up there, he'll be done. Our son has decided to come and use the blower to blow the gutters out because he doesn't like to see us climbing around up there. So ignore the noise for a minute. Thank you, Brenda, very much. So monarchs, for those who are raising it. Any questions about that or anything else?
Well, Michelle had asked, is that what causes a black chrysalis? But she explained that it could be darker, but that turn almost black, but you could see the butterfly through the chrysalis. And
Yeah, because they all turn black. That's our cue that tomorrow morning it's going to come out.
yep, if it's black now, you better get it close to food.
I have to move my picture here so that I can get to the. Okay, let's pick up a couple of things that came in before and I didn't answer. We're talking about shaping a young tree. The question came in about a red bud. They've got a young red bud. How long do they wait? How long do I wait before I start pruning it so it's a tree? I want it to be a tree, she says. So I thought we would show people red buds. Here is Sonia's red bud tree. This is the second year. The first year it was a stick.
First year we didn't prune it.
Yeah, the first year it was a stick about yay high. Now it's got that whole year's growth on it, and it's time to start turning it into a tree. The sooner you do it, the better. We walked the Detroit Zoo with a wonderful man, John Loncar, who was an arborist in 1928 when the zoo was made, and he was telling us about the trees that they planted and what they'd done. And he was in his 90s and still had a pair of pruners in his pocket. And when we asked him about taking a particular branch off, he said, if it's too big for these, and he pulled out his pruners, if it's too big to be cut with these, you probably waited too long. So don't wait too long to take pieces off. What Sonia did that year was took off the lower branches because she doesn't want it to be a multi-trunked tree. And she doesn't need lower branches down where her perennials and the shrubs are. Eventually, she'll be taking even more branches off as it grows. This branch and this branch may well come off. Maybe even this branch will come off. And The same goes for when Elizabeth Sattler told us about this tree.
Littler.
Elizabeth Littler, sorry. Elizabeth Littler told us about this tree that was getting in the way of people trying to walk on the boardwalk. We suggested that it become a one trunk tree, and then you start elevating it, taking the lower limbs up. We said, take off, leave this trunk, take off these down here. She did, and said, well, will branches appear on the side that's bare now? Yes, when the light is hits these branches, they will sprout new stuff, new shoots. But chances are good, if the people have been running into it, walking on the deck, that this branch is eventually gonna go. You need a new straight leader, so you're training a tree the whole time that you're working with it. You're not just accepting that what is there right now, but anticipating what's going to be there in the future. And it is a little scary if you wait too long. This is all the stuff that Elizabeth and her crew took off of the tree when they here's what Sonia took off after it got growing. So it is a little scary to do, but that's how you get a nice looking tree. And it's kind of a shame that now most trees are grown in containers and are not groomed quite like this. The shade trees are that are sold to cities to go along the city streets because they have to have clearance for vehicles to park under them or whatever. But a lot of the other trees are just grown bushy, and nobody has done anything to select good branches, and you have to start off on your own. Questions about pruning or about anything else? It's a beautiful, beautiful screen.
I forgot I was muted. Nothing so far, nothing in chat.
Okay.
Other than somebody mentioned Gay says that her caterpillars really preferred the butterfly weed.
Right, we heard that from someone else last week too. Okay, oh. Those of you who feel like weeding is a chore or have been told that, oh, weeding is I can't believe you just like to weed. When we're weeding, we're seeing what other people don't see. It takes an experienced eye to see what's going on.
To be a good weeder, you have to have a great eye.
Right, a good pattern recognition, and I mean those kinds of things. This is I saw a planter with a tomato in it and this, and at first I went, oh my gosh, there are a number of lettuce relatives that are weeds, wild lettuce, white lettuce, prickly lettuce, and then I realized that no, I'm looking at lettuce. I'm looking at lettuce that bolted and lettuce going to flower. But once you see the flower of something and you're looking at a new weed, if the flower looks like the flower of another plant, chances are that they're related, and it starts giving you a leg up to figure out what it is. Why do you want to know what it is? Because sometimes they're perennial versus annual, and they become a higher priority to get out before they start replicating themselves by runners or however it is that they do what they do. Maybe you just want to know so that you know whether or not it's something that you might react to. I've heard again this week, what was it, zinnias? Someone was cutting zinnias for cut flowers, and the zinnias irritated their skin. There's little hairs on the stem, and they can be irritating.
Mm-hmm.
Sonia was asked, her husband said, can you come take a look at the planters at the brewery on our patio? The grasses in the planters have kind of gone crazy. Well, Sonia came and looked and slapped her husband upside the head, said, hey, you come out here. Those are called weeds. Those are not the grasses that are in there. And there weren't grasses in there in the first place. They were spikes that are in the Dracaenas. To get those out of planters without disturbing everything else that's in there, Sonia had to go below the crown of the grass and slice the roots off from the plant itself. She also found that they walked right past elm trees growing in there. See the elm tree right there? Because they're not gardeners. They're serving beverages and sandwiches and those kinds of things and not paying attention to what's going on.
That's why restaurants that have those outdoor containers or things like that often hire a company to come in and maintain them, because it's a skill to be a waitress. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot
to be a good weeder.
And then just like a good weeder, but chances are the waitress isn't going to want to weed.
Yeah, we can sound kind of extreme to some people. Tanya sent this picture. She said it's at our condos. We've got a big pond, and they put feather reed grass, which seems to do okay when it gets flooded, but the cardinal flower got flooded and it died. And now we're seeing this coming up. And does this look like Phragmites to you? Yes, this looks like Phragmites to me. And that's something that you have to nip in the bud. This is something that a good weeder needs to know. I have to dig that out, roots and all, or I have to cut that back and paint it. And I sent them to the website of a group. I think they are based in Lapeer. There's another one it's called the Tip of the Mitt that has been working on Phragmites control and has several strategies that they use. But you don't let that sit for a little while. You do not let it sit. It's kind of like bindweed. Weedy questions. What a great spade that is. Well, shovel. I never did that. And while Sonia was weeding at the brewery, her dog was demonstrating weeding technique. Sadly, it was in the vegetable bed. This is her elder lab, Callie, and Callie likes carrots. And Callie has figured out, without doing any digging at all, how to extract a carrot. She has learned what some of the best weeders learn, which is you have to grab the crown of the plant and pull hard, not the leaves. So a carrot, no difference between a carrot and a dandelion in this respect. If you grab just the leaves of the dandelion, they're just going to break off at the crown and grow right back again next week. But if you grab the crown, the actual top of the root, and pull hard enough, you can get the carrot or the dandelion out of the ground.
Yeah. Michelle says, oh, well, first Sharon Petaway said, yes, weeders recognize what is out of place.
Yeah.
And Michelle says she wishes the Troy Golf Course would have listened to her about getting out the Phragmites 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yep. They're
And Lori is asking, is there an indispensable weeding tool? In my opinion, it's a fork.
Yep.
A garden fork.
I use a fork all the time while I'm weeding. And I started doing it when my dad showed me, put the fork in and loosen everything first, loosen it. And it's amazing how much more readily the weeds come out, and you can trace roots and get entire root systems. And then I found one of my clients he had broken the handle on his fork and he was using just the head of the fork as a weeder. Then our friend Burdette had a little fork, maybe about this big. I have one that's meant to be a kid's fork. It's a forged fork by the old Smith & Hawkins company that was buying from the forge in England. But it's a good tool to loosen. Steve likes to use an asparagus fork as a dandelion weeder, right, Steve? The single.
Not as much as the fork anymore. The fork you could loosen all the way around a lot easier. And we're talking about a garden fork or a spading fork, a potato fork, not a, Lori asked, dinner fork? No, not a dinner fork.
No, dinner fork won't do it.
Maybe for a giant, yeah.
The red knife that I use, it's the double-sided knife. It is a Milwaukee tool. Steve calls it my Rambo knife. I don't use that very much for weeding. I do use it for dividing and other things. I'm not good with things with two edges. I tend to try to press down on things, and if it's a double-sided blade like that, I'm going to cut myself. So
it gets a little scary, two edges.
Yeah, so I weed with my fork and with my hand hoe, my triangular blade hand hoe, and a number of companies make them. Not all of them the way that mine is made. That company doesn't make them anymore, so we try real hard not to lose mine. But it's
almost any gardener you want to talk to, they probably have a favorite tool for weeding that is somewhat different. Margaret likes her Japanese knife.
Yeah. Sharon says it's nice to have a moist season to weed in, and that's true, but it's also a bane. People like to go out and weed when it's wet. And I tell people that might be one of the worst times to weed, because every gardener I've ever seen, when you pull up a weed, looks at the dirt on the weed's roots and says, I'm not going to give up my dirt, and shakes the weed. Now the dirt, which was below the mulch and is loaded with weed seeds, is now scattered on top of moist mulch. You couldn't have seeded in your weeds better. So sometimes it's better.
There's also, oh, sorry.
No,
I didn't mean to step on you.
No, it's okay. Sometimes it's better to wait a little while until at least the top surface dries out so that you're not scattering weed seeds on top of a moist seed bed.
There is also the thought of compaction of the soil.
Oh, definitely working in the wet. Steve, is this kudzu? What do you got here?
No, that's the fall clematis at Sue.
Oh my gosh, finally made it up the tree. This is a
Yep.
spruce tree that
Is on its way out.
over 15 years ago, I said you've probably only got another 10 years before that's not going to be a useful tree because all the branches were dying back on this side and they're not going to grow back on a spruce. So we started a clematis and it didn't go until other branches started dying and there was light and then it started leaping into the light places.
Took a while, but
Yeah.
it's going to be impressive when it blooms.
Yeah. I think while we're here, we might as well go to when to give up on a tree. Therese asked about this hardest decision for any living thing, isn't it? Is when you say to give up. She said it's her neighbor's tree. And she said, is it time to give up the ghost? That tree has lost its leader. It's got an incredible amount of wood. The wood to green ratio is way overbalanced toward wood. And the only way that the wood can get energy is from the green needles. So it's starving little by little and going to lose more and more of itself. And it probably is becoming a dangerous tree because looking at the base of it, there's almost certainly fabric girdling the tree, fabric underneath these rocks that are down here. And there's no flare there. So there may be girdling roots. So I would say no, it's time for that one to go. Steve and I hate to take down trees. Even we have a dead spruce, not as big as this one. We have a dead spruce up in the backyard still that we'll leave up for a couple more years. Once the bark starts lifting off of it, we'll take it out. But the birds roost in it, and it's important to us to have the birds out there. But it is hard to say go. But wood is it stabilizes the tree. It's an incredible organ that the organism makes. But it takes energy to maintain wood. Doesn't seem like it does, but it does.
Judy had mentioned her hands with arthritis. The fork really helps her because the pulling is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Elizabeth likes her homatic, and which is about 14 inches with a hoe on one side and a fork on the other side.
On the other side, yep. So you can loosen with that, and with
Susan
that you can loosen by swinging it in and then levering it forward. So you're using your arm, not having to stand up and push the fork in with your foot.
Susan uses her husband for weeding, absolutely the best. Michelle said, called sweet clematis, beautiful, but throws seeds everywhere.
It does
buggers
indeed.
Get up. That is true.
It does indeed. It's a very invasive plant. Sharon
also asking, do you feel that the Spruce Clematis Association a companion planting?
No,
not necessarily. No, we wouldn't do that normally. It's just to hide those dead branches till eventually.
Till she decided to take the tree out. And she told me this year, I think it's time for the tree to go. So it made it 15 years rather than the 10 that I told her. No, that's a succession planting as far as I'm concerned. Let's get the new thing started before the old one goes.
Yeah.
While we're talking about husbands weeding for us, or actually, where'd we go? Lilac borer, Teresa, wants to know what to do with the wood. Teresa heard us talking about lilac and she said, well, my lilac all of a sudden has dead on it.
Ooh.
Although there's still green. There's Virginia creeper creeping over it, but there's still green on other branches. This is a lilac that 2 years ago I had Teresa, I took a look at it and had Teresa start taking out old stems because it had never been pruned. It had very old, very big stems with lots of borer damage evident on it. So this one, just like many other of the lilacs this year, it really couldn't make it through the summer. And if you look at what borers do, she said that it has leaves and the leaves have problems. So the leaves have problems all the time on lilacs. That's not what's causing that to happen. This is the lilac borer moth. It doesn't look like a moth, but it's a moth. It's called a clearwing moth. And it lays its eggs on the wood, usually near weak crotches, cracks in the bark, and repeatedly keeps addressing the same thing year by year. The caterpillar chews into the wood, eats the cambium right below the bark, so it swivels back and forth, doing that kind of, what do they call that, wormwood, when you buy furniture that's got the patterns, the squiggles on it. And then in the winter, bores into the sapwood, into the wood inside. So it's your inside of your lilac becomes unsteady, and then they bore their way out in the spring. This is from a landscape maintenance firm that had a picture of something that I keep trying to do when we take a lilac out. I'm trying to find a way to slice it in half there and show you the galleries. The galleries are the places where they live, but this is what's happening inside that lilac and causing it to have the enlarged crotches. This is an ash tree that has this one here. And because they live the winter in the wood and emerge in the spring when it's warm as the lilac's beginning to bloom, or there's another one that starts a little bit earlier than that. If you cut out a branch of your lilac now and cut it down as low as you can, don't keep that in your yard. Either shred it up if you're going to keep it in the yard, or burn it, or send it off to be hot composted, because the borers can still emerge from it in the spring, and you haven't reduced your number of borers that way. And in looking this up, I realized, oh, that's right, there's another borer. This is a beetle. Let's see, the hard wing covers have moved out of the way, and now the wings are out. This is a beetle called the red-headed ash borer. Ash and lilac are in the same family, and they share some pests. The lilac borer can bore in either one of them, and the red-headed borer can bore in either one of them. And it could be that we've got a lot of red-headed borers. That's what the beetle looks like when it's closed up. And this comes from iNaturalist.org, which is another great site. Bug Guide is wonderful, and iNaturalist is good. So wood is one of those things that you don't want to keep around if you have borer problems.
Sharon is asking, is the lilac borer native to Michigan?
Yes, it's wait. Yes, it is. It's actually called the lilac/ash borer, because we do have, I'm trying to remember which lilac it is, that it's not the common lilac that's native here. That's a Eurasian plant, but the ashes are native here, and the borers were on the ashes and could move to the lilacs too. I'd have to look and see which. It seems like there's a lilac that's native in the Mississippi Valley, but I'm not sure of that, or sure of its name right now.
Okay.
And most of the lilacs we grow are not. They are Asian or Eurasian plants.
Okay. Miller is asking, what are the chances verticillium wilt in trees is caused by leaf mulch brought into the yard this spring? 5 trees in the yard with it this year.
Yeah, verticillium wilt is a fungal infection. It clogs up the circulatory system, if you want to call it that, of the pathways that water and starches take in the plant, and they cause the plant to wilt and die. Do you know that? Well, okay, verticillium wilt is something that can live in the soil and in debris, so it's possible that it can come into someplace with debris. But do you know that you had verticillium wilt? We have seen a number of times where people say, I think verticillium wilt got this, when really it was a root problem or a water problem. Or to know that you have verticillium wilt, you generally have to send a sample of the transition wood between the wood that's showing the symptoms and the wood that's not showing symptoms, or a piece of the root that's showing the symptoms, to a lab to verify that it's verticillium wilt. Because there are other things that can look like it. That I wouldn't want to have you jumping all over verticillium wilt. If you do actually have verticillium wilt established in an area, then you need to go. We have it on our website. I'll have to look and find out where it is. There are a number of plants that are resistant to verticillium wilt. I know all the conifers are, so growing pines or spruce or fir there in a place is a good way to time out the verticillium wilt. I can't remember some of the other. I'm pretty sure that redbud is on the list, but at any rate, it's a tough thing to deal with.
Miller says it was checked by a tree specialist. So
I can't. If they went to a lab, then I know for sure that it's there. If it's not, yeah. There are ways that you can look. I think also on our website we showed some pictures of the the staining in the sapwood if verticillium wilt is in the tree. So there are some symptoms that you can see that might indicate a need for a lab test, but I can't answer otherwise. But all of these fungal stuff can move around with other stuff. I've had people blame the loss of a shrub or a tree to verticillium wilt on growing tomatoes there, because tomatoes get verticillium wilt. If a tomato gets verticillium wilt, you can tell it wilts. It doesn't just get some yellow branches on it. It wilts and dries back. Okay, should we move on to other happier topics?
I'm trying to find something, so yeah, you can.
And I want to tell you why I was talking to Brenda Sattler, Brenda Zedek this week. Their coincidences like happened this week are what keep us wanting to do this. If you have a place where questions can come in, like about raising butterflies, which cause you to talk to other people, things can come up, and sometimes unrelated items fit together. Sometimes it takes years. I definitely have, Steve has seen me come running back into the house to open up my log and say, I heard about this before, I heard about this before, who told me about this before? Sometimes it takes only days, and this one took only days. We were talking about the eggs that Mary Ellen found on her verbena leaf and sent us the picture and said, whose eggs could this be? And I looked at them and thought, well, let's see, which butterflies might host on verbena? And in our Audubon Butterfly Guide in the host plant book, it said that there's one called the Fiona checker spot that can host on verbenas. I said, oh, well, maybe it's that one, because they didn't have very many others that were there. Brenda, though, when I talked to her, ruled it out. She said, there's no way. She said, they belong in the desert Southwest in Mexico, and they're not up here. They might sometimes make it over to Oklahoma, but not to here. You can look up host plants for butterflies at places like the National Wildlife Federation, where you can click on a part of the map and get a list of host plants for butterflies in your area. Or you can just Google host plant, butterfly, caterpillar host plants. Holden Arboretum, for instance, has got this list up that you can find. Tells you which plants they are and which butterflies. Same thing with Cornell. And once you've got a list open, like North Carolina's, then you can search the list looking for verbena. Theirs are done by caterpillars with the plants next to them. So I was cruising around through there looking at caterpillars. Some of them are much more intense. And I looked at this one, I said, oh, good, from the Natural History Museum. However, it's a Natural History Museum in the United Kingdom. Not going to be our butterflies. Better to stay at home with the Holden Arboretum close by in Ohio than to go to other places, or with Penn State. And so when I went to Penn State, I found, well, there's things that live on verbena, but not verbena anywhere here. So I gave up on that. I said, they're not there. But when we sent back to Mary Ellen, we said, well, we don't know what it is, but maybe you'll hatch them out and tell us what they are when they hatch out. That was day 1. Day 3, Sonia and I were talking about cool insects. She said, look at these guys. Brenda mentioned them. This is milkweed tussock moth. And as Sonia puts it, they're rock stars. She said, these are rock stars. And they turn into just a kind of a dull brown moth. She said, what would it be like to be a rock star like this and turn into just a dull brown moth? We were talking about these. And Sonia said, I found this guy on the milkweed too. Who the heck is this? I said, I just saw one of those last week. He's got every color in the world and every pattern on him. And I was going to look him up, but I didn't take a picture. So I took Sonia's picture, cropped it so I had just the bug in it, put it into a search field, and it came up green stink bug everywhere. I said, it's not a green stink bug. Then I looked at it and realized that bugs, they're not like caterpillars. They don't go through a metamorphosis and come out as something entirely different. They gradually change, like a grasshopper getting from a little grasshopper to a big grasshopper, and finally they get wings. There's wing covers being developed here. And as they get older, the wing covers are green, but they're covering this body. Now, the green stink bug is native. And in looking for that and looking for information, because, okay, green stink bug, that's what Sonia and I both saw. Is it native? Is it invasive? Is it dangerous? What does it eat? It eats 20 families of plants. It rarely causes problems. Sometimes agricultural fields get problems with them. Maybe we're having a good year for them. But I'm looking through and just cruising through. This bug guide is, if we think we're crazy about gardens, these bug people, these entomologists and bug citizen scientists are incredible. They put out pictures and peers review it and shift pictures around. So I'm going through the pictures and going through the pictures, looking at all the different aspects of green stink bug. When I got to, I said, wait a minute, what was that? What's that right there? And wait, they were eggs. They were eggs. This looked like Mary Ellen's eggs. So I sent to Mary Ellen, I said, that might be green stink bug eggs on your leaf. They're in the same pattern. They're the same color. And Mary Ellen sent back immediately. She said, I guess you nailed it, because they were hatching out just then. And those two things came together because there was one place where questions can come in and we can throw them out to other people and see what happens. And I think that's enough reason for me to keep doing this until.
That's why we have so much fun doing this. We get all this cool stuff that people see and end up being something that we didn't expect. Very nice.
And very truthfully, emerald ash borer was identified because of this network.
Yes.
We got a letter from T.L. Hart, a 2-page letter with a great amount of detail of what he'd done to his ash tree over the last 3 years to try to get it to perk back up. He'd been told that it was ash yellows, that it was ash decline. He'd had it treated with this and treated with that. He said, now I'm looking around and realizing that all the ashes in the neighborhood look bad. And I read that and I realized that in his same area, Canton, Michigan, I'd gotten letters from a couple of other people who said, my trees look bad, but a lot of Canton is new development at that point, and a lot of new subdivisions have crummy trees. Honestly, they're planted badly and they're not doing well. But this guy, he's telling me he's been here long enough, and this tree is 30 years old, and etc. So I asked one of the teachers from our gardening school who lives close by there. I said, "Can you go by and take a look at this tree?" She went and she called me from the tree. She said, "You need to come down here and look at this." She told me what she saw. We went and we looked at it. Then we called Mike Barger from Mike's Tree Surgeon, and Dave Roberts from Michigan State. They called Carl Dahlhoff from the Michigan Department of Agriculture. We met at the tree. We sent in a sample. The sample came back first from Michigan State saying those are bark beetles, but we had climbed up in the tree and found D-shaped holes. That's why we called people. So there isn't anything that makes a D-shaped exit hole that we know of that hosts on ash. There's something else going on. So because we had the authorities with us, a tree surgeon, at Michigan State's pathologist at the time, and a Michigan Department of Agriculture people, we were able to get back to the pathology lab and say, no, look again, there's something else going on. And so that year in 2003, we got emerald ash borer identified. And that's because gardeners talk to each other. Really, it's really what comes down to it. Okay. Oh, sometimes things work out just like they do. The 3rd week of August, we always expect the heat to break. And this year it's right on time. The nights start getting cool, and now the plants are getting the cue to stop pushing out new growth. It becomes a good time to prune if you're trying to shape something or keep it small. It's also a great time to start moving things. When our monarch hatched out, and Sonia names all the caterpillars, and this one was named Judge John. But Judge John is a lady. No, it's not a good picture, but these on the hind wing, these lines are skinnier, and there's a bulge in the middle of it if it's a male right here. So Judge John ended up being Judge Judy. Judge John said, no, I'm not going out there. It's too cool. It wasn't until 10:30 in the morning that it was warm enough for a butterfly to fly. And that's a great time of year to start doing things. So I've been digging things up and taking them over to my sister's garden. I was digging things up right before we started tonight. So if you've got something to transplant and even waiting, get it moved now. Let it have the entire nice, gentle fall to grow new roots in its new place and to get established before it has to handle cold and dormancy.
For sure. It's a lot easier too doing it now.
Yeah, I'm also late on my crabapple pruning. I've made it hard with all the ground cover around there, so a lot I have to do in the wintertime, but I've been working on the low level pruning with my short ladder, working to take off the overgrowth, because this tree wants to be back where it was with big old branches, 4 inches in diameter, arching further up. And I will go around it once now, and sometime during the winter, when the plants are its feet are out of its way, I'll go around with my bigger ladder and my pole pruner and take off the top layer going around. But now is the time that you can do that. Are you going to lose flower? No. Some of the branches that I take off, would have flowered, but there are plenty of newer branches that have just gotten old enough to flower. Most of what you see here sticking straight up or curling over, that's 1 year wood. That's the first year growth on an apple. And that first year growth is not going to have flowers. It's just going to make leaves. And next year, the side branches will be old enough to make a flower bud for the 3rd year. So we're not losing anything by cutting. And it's a great time of year to go look at other people's gardens and see what's going on. This came from Jim Dresbach. He said, my garden, here's my tour of my garden. And we should do that. We should see each other's gardens and see this time of year what kinds of things are doing well, what kinds of things we should be adding to our garden, what we should be doing now.
Margaret said that's what she did today. Mother Nature talks to you, and if you look and listen, it talks to you if you look and listen, right?
Yep. We just think about it for a minute and say, what is it? What am I meant to do today? And there it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to keep jumping.
Nothing new right now, except for a little bit of giggling about Michelle mentioning monarch male butterflies have balls, quotes, on the lines. Is how she remembers the difference.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I have to keep going back because I've gone away. Oh, keep deadheading. There were questions this week because we talked about deadheading, and I talked about deadheading a butterfly bush. The bloom's not over, not by a long shot. There's still a lot of weeks of bloom left. There's a lot of butterflies floating around out there. Keep deadheading. This is butterfly bush, and someone said if I cut the butterfly bush, if I cut the spent stalk down here, will those side ones, will they just keep getting smaller as it goes down? And no, they won't. See that these side branches that developed below this part that already bloomed, they're just as big as this is. They're going to grow bigger. But if you cut to up here and let just the little side ones grow, they're going to be smaller. The bigger the branch is, the bigger the side branch, flowering branch is that it can form. So when you cut the whole flower stalk off, they don't get shorter. They just keep growing up. And there's another new one coming from the next layer down, and it will extend itself up all the way to the edge of the plant too. See, all the way up. And that's ready to be headed back to here at least.
And they will go for a while, these butterfly bushes.
Yeah, they if you keep deadheading butterfly bush, they'll go until frost.
Yep.
The last thing that our butterflies nectar on. I got to get the birdseed hulls cleaned up again. They're beginning to accumulate, Stephen.
Oh, sorry.
It has been a good year, a lot of rain, but there's been stressful times. It was very hot for a while. It's also been maybe a bit of overgrowth going on. We talked about that last time, that the plants were pushing out so much growth that they used up all of the available nitrogen in the soil, particularly in a new neighborhood. The plants are showing their stress by going to fall color early. These are ginkgos, aren't they, Steve?
Yep, down the whole street on both sides.
Oh man, I hope they're all clones and not females. Whoops. Yeah, but it's just like people. You have a friend stop over and they look pale or they look red. You know something's going on. They're either
Well, you could see there's a green one in the front, and there's 2 green ones right where the driveway curves. So they all shouldn't. I mean, ginkgos usually are pretty consistent at the same time.
Yeah,
and I think this is more stress. Look, it's lost all the leaves on its leader. And they go straight into the ground.
That's how ginkgos and most trees lose their leaves, is they lose their outer shell of leaves first, and then the inner ones go afterwards, which is why they can tell us that the color is 50% past in a particular area is because half of the tree is cleared out. But yeah, when you see this, you know there's some kind of stress, and it might be the year, but in a new subdivision like that, you'd want to look a little further. That same area, which is all newly planted, this is all burning bush.
That's the newer area. This area was here. The foreground has been there for about 1.5 years longer than the red ones, I think.
But the
It's a different fence. It's a different
this picture
planting.
this picture is from yesterday.
Yep,
It's not fall yet. These shouldn't be in color. If you
not
look
that color.
if you look at them closely, you can even see that the plant was chlorotic. Talked about that before, with having dark veins and lighter in between the veins because there's not enough nutrient to actually fill all the cells. So these are in trouble. My bet is it's a new subdivision and the drainage is terrible.
Horrible.
Because burning bush does not put up with bad drainage. Yews and burning bush are the first ones to go. If you have a improperly drained area and a little bit of a slope, the one at the bottom will die first, and then the one next to it, and then all the way up. So it's probably drainage. The trees, they each have a space around them, but not much of a space around them. And if you look at all that grass and think that all that grass, which is also new, has been greedily taking up water and nutrients, it's not a lot for a big tree like that, big tree like in the background here, because those are those trees.
And they're turning red, even though they are a red maple hybrid, they're still turning red a little early and showing the same signs of stress that the burning bush did.
A little early, that's at least 6 weeks early.
Well, for red maple, some of them in the woods are starting, but they're the stressed ones. That's true.
Yeah. So anyway, learn the color that your plant should be, because it's telling you a story.
Yeah.
It's a cool guy.
Diane mentioned that from the photo, it looked like the ginkgos were a telephone pole at the base. They really were,
Yeah,
all the trees.
Yeah, they're
Yeah. And then Suzanne is asking, I lost the question. Hang on.
About the Japanese maple.
No, one of my rhododendrons is pale, but its neighbors are deep green. They are fertilized once or twice a year with hollytone. Suzanne's or the neighbors fertilized?
If I have a rhododendron that's pale and it's in a group with others that are doing better, I'm going to look at the trunks, at the major branches, for signs of borer, because there is a borer that gets into the rhododendron, and that can do the same thing that's doing to your lilac. And once the plant gets into the hot part of the summer, the stress is going to show more than anything else. So there's also a newsletter that has pictures of the borer damaged rhododendron wood. And what you need to do is cut that out and get that out of the yard.
Was Suzanne's Japanese maple the one that was at the beginning before
Yes.
I signed on?
Yes, it was.
She says thoughts about a Japanese maple poor drainage. One way you could find out if it's poor drainage or not on those maples that have that leaf that looks like it's scorched. If you crumble the leaf in your hand, if it falls up, it's too moist. If it falls apart, it's dry.
All right, if it crackles, then it curled up because it was dry. So you can also do a drainage test. You don't need to have a big hole, just a deep hole. So you can use a drill even to make a hole 18 inches and fill it and see if it drains out well. But we did show, I think you probably were not here yet, and we'll send you the picture of what we saw. We did show the group here that was here for warm up that there is damage on that trunk. What do you think people will mind if we go back to that, Steve?
We have about, I don't know, 5-6 minutes, so I don't know why not.
Okay, then I'm going to, okay,
You
close
gotta
your
go farther back though.
Yeah, close your eyes because we're going to go through these fast. There it is. So I'm glad you sent a full resolution picture, Suzanne, because that's not normal bark pattern. Those are cracked bark because the cambium is dead underneath that area, and it's been dead for at least a couple of years. So now the bark has not been renewed and is lifting off. I think that this side of the tree is facing out toward the driveway, and there's probably reflected light and heat coming off of the sidewalk or driveway on it. At any rate, every place that you see damage like that and like this right here, that's what needs to be shaded in the wintertime. And there may be some here. I couldn't enlarge that to see it, but we think your problem is what happens to Japanese maples by the boatload. They get put out in a place where you might think that it's protected. But if it's in the sun in the wintertime, especially in the afternoon sun, and that sun can be reflecting off of something to get on it, it's going to damage that bark. Okay.
Hey, this is Suzanne, should I protect the bark with a covering?
You
In
can,
that case, or grass?
anything that will shade the bark. It has a thin bark. It's actually green. When you look through the normal lines in a Japanese maple, you'll see green in there that it actually can still photosynthesize. And what you're trying to do is wrap it. Japanese would wrap it with rice paper. In the article that I haven't sent it to you yet, but we showed it to the group here. It's what's coming up, number 68.
I pulled it, I've got it, I printed it out, yeah.
Yeah, you can use pine branches, juniper branches,
Hemlock branches, grass, miscanthus grass.
yeah, anything to shade the trunk. Because if you keep it in the shade, then it's not going to have that problem.
Don't wrap it super tight to let moisture build up underneath there.
Right,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay. I'm looking for suggestions for another Diane, who's playing Rummy Cub tonight, she said, so she's not going to be here, but she's got an area that's shady, gets about 3 hours of sun at most each day, and she needs things that are low and colorful. She decided to take out a line of bamboo and put in sky pencil holly. So she's got 12 sky pencil holly, and she said, now there's room for a ground cover under there, and I'd like some color. And because it's shady, that color is probably going to have to be in foliage. Does anybody have any suggestions? The soil is sandy. She put in a couple inches of better soil on top, but underneath it's sandy. It is loose, but it's not got a lot of nutrient in it. I'm thinking of ajugas of various kinds and brass buttons and other steppables. Has anyone got any suggestions? Put them in the chat and we'll relay those over to Diane.
Yeah.
Have to be very low because if they have any real height to them at all, they'll end up flopping onto the walkway, which is what the bamboo was kicked out for. She said things like this that stay really low on the ground. This looks like it might be baby's tears to me, but I can't tell for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Suzanne suggests maybe sedum. A sedum might work there.
In I thought about sedums are very pretty and they give a lot of color, but in the
But they
shade,
tend to creep over.
well, also at 3 hours of sun at most.
Oh,
That's
3,
obvious.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, jugas are tough. They can take some walking on.
yeah. I have to tell you that I went to the herb store with my friend Na. It's an Asian herb store in I guess we're in Sterling Heights. Sterling Heights, Troy. I guess I'm not sure where we were. And I walked into the herb store and here's all these things you can buy for blood pressure, for ladies' comfort, for clear eyes. And to be fair, men's tea, potent men's tea, cleansing tea, pimple solution, don't you love it? But what really got my eye as I walked in and out the rows, and it's a big store, a lot going on, were the bags and packages of herbs, which were extensive, lots of them, and all written in Chinese because this is an Asian garden store. But what was there, written in Latin characters, not English, Latin characters, were things that we can relate to. Blackberry lily root. Whoa, I said blackberry lily root. I wonder what we use that for. And I wonder when they harvest it. Morris alba, that's white mulberry, and that's wood. Those are twigs that are cut up.
Mm-hmm.
It made me want to immediately go home and get out my Gerard's herbal and Culpepper's herbal and go, what are we using these things for? Or with the book that Jethro Lai gave me, the medical student from Taiwan, that has all of those traditional medicines. And how about this? The root of Phragmites.
Yeah.
Yeah, for herbal soup. Polygonatum odoratum. Does that sound familiar to anybody? This is the root of your sweet Solomon seal, the variegated Solomon seal we were talking about being slug fed earlier. And Taraxacum, there's an A missing. Well, I'll let them do that. Taraxacum mongolicum, that's the cousin of dandelion. It looks like dandelion. Has a more ragged leaf on the edge, but it's dandelion root, which I think is kind of fun. Okay, we already did.
All right. We
So-
are at the end
Okay,
of time. It's 8 o'clock.
then we're gonna leave with poison ivy because it is the season when people think
Yes.
it's too much. We are constantly.
We alert everybody.
Yeah. And there is a poison ivy, poison oak mix-up that goes on all the time with people. Another Sue sent this picture and she said, "Is this poison ivy?" Yes, this is
Yes.
poison ivy. And can you see why they say it has glossy leaves? When it's young, see how glossy they are. Leaves of 3, often in our area anyway, with thumbs on the back leaves, like mittens. It climbs. This is a neighbor's crabapple. This is today. Steve took this picture today. The crabapple has no leaves on it because it's been a scabby year and it's dropped all its leaves. The poison ivy, however, is just as lush and wonderful as it can possibly be. The people who live in this house have 2 little kids. We're talking to them about when is the best time to take that down. We could cut the bottom. And boy, lush and green, no scab on that. We could cut the bottom. It's got a number of places where the vine grabbed the trunk.
At least 15.
Yeah, so we could cut those stems and paint the downside with an herbicide to try to kill the root. But right now, it's got so much leaf surface on it that pulling those vines off the tree is not, it's not something we're going to be able to do. But if we cut it now, the leaves may hang on the plant rather than fall off, which might be good because what if we leave it till fall and all those leaves fall and somebody has to pick them up? We're working on how best to deal with this situation as the poison ivy queen king of the neighborhood.
I'd be almost tempted to do 1-cut pruning. Just take the whole thing and chop it down.
Oh, with the tree too, you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, there's that, but still, you're still going to come into contact. Well,
I know. I'm just saying though.
because it climbs, it gets called poison oak. It is not poison oak, it's poison ivy. We don't have poison oak in the Midwest or the Northeast. We have poison sumac in a swamp. If you're in a swamp, you might have poison sumac, and it does not look like the sumac that grows along the side of the road. It does not have pointy red berry clusters on it, but it does have the sumac-like leaves, the multiple leaves, the ferny, but it's only going to be in a wet area. If you look up Toxicodendron radicans, our poison ivy, you're going to find on the USDA, it's called Eastern poison ivy, and it belongs here. This is where you find it. Poison oak, which is called Pacific poison oak, is on the West Coast. The reason that people think it is because it climbs. This is from yesterday. We were walking past the tree. I said, "Steve, look at this." Steve said, "Oh my gosh, do you know what that is?" Yes, we know what that is. That's a poison ivy vine growing up that oak tree. Look how big it is. It's as big around, it's bigger around than Steve's arm is. It's going up the tree probably 60 feet. And if that was a smaller tree that it was growing on, and I've seen this happen, that poison ivy vine, with all of its branches up there, can shade out the original tree. That tree dies, and the poison ivy is standing tree-like, and people think it's a tree. It's still poison ivy, not poison oak, which is kind of good because it's a little bit better in terms of trying to clear up the rash. But the oil is in the roots, it's in the wood, it's in the leaves. You just need to keep your exposure to it down to a minimum. Well, thank you for sticking with us, and thanks for being here tonight and every night. We like to talk to people. That kind
Yes,
of lightning bug's a little bit big for that tree toad, huh? Tree
Yeah.
toad. So that's it for Free for All Friday number 17. The next Free for All is September 13th. We're taking Labor Day off. Labor Day weekend, taking off. And the Saturday after Labor Day, we're doing our next gardening on the line about property line gardening issues. That will be on September 7th. So join us September 13th for the next Free for All Friday, and we will pick up with whatever questions you send in and whatever things we observe. Thanks.
Quick question from Judith. Do the leaves and stems of poison ivy that's been cut stay poisonous? Yes.
Yes, they do.
After they dry out, yes.
Yes, as long as there is still oil in them, and it takes a long time for the oil to be gone.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. Take care. Have a great Labor Day.
Enjoy this nice,
See you soon.
sleeping nights. See you later.